Welcome to the Musical Instrument Museum in Phoenix. Join us as we explore the rich history, diverse cultures, and beautiful melodies that make this museum special. Get ready to immerse yourself in the world of music like never before. Let's dive in. The museum is divided into 5 geographic galleries, which showcase global music and culture through multimedia that allows you to hear, see, and feel the creative spirit of people as they play their instruments. The museum was founded by Robert Ulrich, a former CEO and chairman of Target Corporation, and a collector of African art and lover of museums. Maybe it's the founder's influence, but we start the museum with the African Gallery. We spent the longest time in the African section because of the sheer variety of cultures, subcultures, instruments, etc., and they were all pretty unknown to us. After Asia, Africa is the world's second largest continent for both landmass and population. There are between 1,500 to 2,000 languages spoken in Africa. Done in 2001, this map shows the approximate locations of about 3,500 ethnic groups. You can imagine the huge variety of music there is on the African continent. For example, in Africa, you can see there's a big difference between sub-Saharan and North African musical traditions. We appreciated that the museum was organized by culture and not just by country. World geographic boundaries have not always existed as they are currently. It's interesting to see the similarities and differences between areas that lie near each other. And there are many more cultures that people themselves group themselves by, which is more personal to them than the country affiliation assigned. For example, the musical instruments of Kenya are as varied as the country's mix of nomads, Bantu cultures, and the Swahili people who live along the coast. Nomads such as the Massa and the Turkana have rich vocal traditions and avoid bulky instruments that they need to carry around with them. They favor animal horns and flutes. In Western Kenya, they have lyres and one-stringed spike lute traditions are all over the nation, including the Mijikenda. And there's also ritual drumming also found throughout the country among the Bantu peoples. You get the double reed pipes such as the Nuzumari along the Arabian Peninsula on the Indian Ocean trade routes, and those are popular with the coastal Swahili and Mijikenda people. So that's one country and a whole lot of traditions. Music and dance can also be segregated by gender. Notice that it is the men dancing and there is a hip belt with music. From ancient relics to contemporary masterpieces, each instrument tells a unique story of its cultural significance and musical legacy. The museum is divided into 5 geographical locations and also has a series of other galleries, like the Experience Gallery, where you can try making some music on global instruments similar to the ones on display throughout the museum. Or the Artist Gallery, where you can get a close-up look of instruments and memorabilia for influential artists such as Elvis Presley, geographically and culturally with India, Central Asia, and the Middle East. So music in different regions of the country is performed by very different ethnic groups. In addition to ethnic distinctions, music is also traditionally divided along gender lines. So women perform in private settings such as wedding parties and accompany song and dance and with the drum. Men have greater access to a range of musical instruments and often perform in public settings. The rubeb is a plucked instrument that's considered the national instrument and is used to accompany song and ensembles, along with the Indian tabla again. The exhibit for each country visit features a flat-screen, high-resolution video showing local musicians performing on native instruments as well. Visitors can listen to the performance through a wireless device with headphones that is activated automatically when an exhibit is being observed. This works very well. I was super impressed. And for a musical museum, the experience is remarkably quiet and also very personal because you can listen to what you want and are not tied in to specific times, so that if you feel like standing in front of something, it will play for you as it goes on, and you're not waiting for something to start. By the way, if you are enjoying this video and learning from it, I hope you remember to Click the like button and subscribe if you would like more travel and travel related content. Thanks. We really appreciated the diversity of regions and countries on display. For example, we do know a bit about Korean music, but not the court and ritual music, which is so very, very different from the K-pop that everyone thinks associates with Korea. Burma has a musical tradition that is different from the rest of Asia. Check out this instrument, which seems like it would be hard to play. It's part of the Burmese outdoor music tradition, which is part of an ensemble of drums and reed pipes, and played during puppetry, dance dramas, and traditional rituals. The indoors music, on the other hand, strikes a very different ambiance and is played on an elegant silk-stringed harp. Oceania is another region about which we knew very little of the music. For example, the region of Polynesian culture extends over 1,000 islands and is a ginormous triangular region of the Pacific Ocean, stretching between Hawaii, New Zealand, and Easter Island. Grouped together like this, it's actually pretty easy to see the similarities and yet differences also between the different island traditions. For example, who knew there were so many different ukuleles in the world? The music of the Americas is a rich mix of the Native Americans who were the original settlers in the area and the people from different parts of the world who voluntarily or not so voluntarily were moved here. For example, in Mexico, the music has been influenced by Europeans, indigenous peoples, and Africans. Probably the best known is mariachi, which received UNESCO World Heritage designation in 2011. Another interesting thing to note is how the traditions combined in different ways to create new musical genres. For example, a similar mix of natives and immigrants created Afro-Cuban music, which is a very different sound from that of mariachi. Moreover, religious elements got mixed into the music as well, such as Santeria in Cuba and voodoo in Haiti. Steel pans are percussion instruments originating from Trinidad and Tobago, but with roots going back to the talking drums of the West Congo, where people could communicate long distances with drum language. Africans incorporated European carnival traditions into their own style, using African-inspired masks, beads, and feathers, and a new tradition was born. You can't miss the North American section because of the giant totem pole that marks the indigenous culture of the region. Spanning national boundaries, it covers both the U.S. and Canadian indigenous culture. The giant powwow drums are pretty impressive. Although no one quite knows the origins of blues music, this American secular folk music was created by African Americans living in the U.S. South in the 20th century and influenced by the work songs and field hollers of the formerly enslaved, minstrel show music, ragtime, church music of African Americans, and the folk and popular music of white Americans. Did you know that Philadelphia is also part of American musical history? The first African American to publish music was from Philadelphia, and that was back in the early 19th century. An old Christmas tradition from the British Isles, Philadelphia has held an annual New York Mummers Festival since 1901. Over 15,000 people march in costume to music and choreography. And of course, inspired by Bronx street culture, the musical form of hip-hop has gone international. African Americans and Caribbean immigrants experimented with using turntables and mixers as musical instruments. Rapping emerged from the African American tradition of verbal dueling. Although drumming is part of traditional Japanese culture, the giant taiko drums you see today emerged after World War II and came out of a North American tradition. Recycling wine barrels to save on cost, Japanese Americans on the West Coast made taiko drumming unique to their experience, borrowing from jazz, blues, and classical music. Also, unlike in Japan, women were allowed to be drummers. Marching band traditions in the USA come from earlier military traditions. The fife and drum regiments from European military practices evolved into the marching bands and school and drum corps we have today that take to the field for parades and sporting events. You even had a uniquely American folk music form that was fife and drum blues bands that started up with African Americans in Mississippi after the Civil War, combining military music, country blues, and African rhythms. We personally felt that the European section lacked flow, where it was tacked on to the end of the North American section. European music seemed to predate and influence lots of American music, so time-wise it was a little jarring. However, it's a great section as you would expect in this museum, featuring everything from Spanish guitars and flamenco of Spain to religious cathedral music and secular orchestral music. It was overall a pretty comprehensive deal. We learned, for example, that although bagpipes are now associated mostly with Scotland and sometimes with Ireland, they were a common instrument throughout Europe from the 12th to the 18th centuries. Spain still has an instrument called the gaita, which is probably the closest to the original medieval version of the instrument. Bagpipes reached Scotland in the 15th century and combined with Gaelic song and harp music became to be most associated with Scotland. As you wander through the museum's galleries, you'll encounter a diverse array of instruments, including simple handmade instruments from recycled materials to majestic European pianos and other intricately wrought and decorated pieces. Some of the meticulous craftsmanship and intricate details of each piece will leave you in awe of the artistic skill and creativity of musicians throughout history. No matter how humble or grand the piece, though, you know that it brought joy to the music maker and the music listener. It encapsulates the museum's theme that music is the language of the soul, a theme that you see recurring throughout the museum. See, it's pretty easy to learn lots in this museum without actually feeling like you're in school. There's even a section on Roma music which crosses country demarcations in Europe. Music is an important part of Roma culture, and there are variations of the genre depending on where the people live. For example, we've talked about flamenco and Andalusia in a previous video in this YouTube series. Another cool thing that we liked was the Bulgaria section, where these costumes reminded us of Chewbacca from Star Wars. The two costumes are a child's and an adult's Kokari costume from Banska, made of goat pelt, bronze, and wood. After visiting village houses to scare away evil spirits in these costumes, the Kokari meet in the village center to act out rituals that are supposed to bring health and prosperity to the community. We learned also that folk music inspired classical music. For example, the Polish folk dance mazurka was popular at festivals and weddings and accompanied by Polish bagpipes, drums, fiddles, and reeds. The French made it popular among their own aristocrats as the polonaise. Then it became even more famous by classical musicians such as Tchaikovsky and Chopin. Big plus point of this museum are the beautiful costumes and the dances that you can see on the video screens. It makes it clear that music does not exist in a vacuum, but is part of the larger cultural heritage of a people. Along the same lines of rich people pretending to be simple folk, but not really, was Russian horn music. In the early 19th century, Russian aristocrats took the simple horn, made this an extremely complicated instrument by using rhythmic precision to use different horns to play different notes as a horn choir. So we hope you enjoyed this quick look at the Musical Instrument Museum. If you liked it, remember to click like and subscribe. See you again soon. Bye-bye.